Hey everyone, welcome to the Burnt Brass Homestead channel. This is part 2 of traveling with our own food and water, which can be extremely budget friendly. If you have not watched part 1, please do so, as it explains why we prefer to travel with our own food and proof of concept using a cheap cooler with ice. I pack sandwiches for just about every trip, every multi-day trip we go on. I bake or fry chicken or slow cook or roast, slice the meat thinly to put in the sandwiches, some condiments, cheese, and lettuce or arugula from the garden, and there you have a simple, delicious finger food to enjoy while driving. Here are the ice blocks I made to go in the cooler. Watch part 1 of this series for more details on the homemade ice blocks. I am using the same Coleman cooler from the previous video where I demonstrated how long homemade ice blocks or bags of ice can keep a cooler below 41 degrees Fahrenheit, 5 degrees Celsius. However, when I packed the cooler, I only used 2 ice blocks to keep the food cool for several days. That is because I was also taking some frozen food. However, next time I will go ahead and use 4 ice blocks in the cooler. I believe there are thinly sliced pieces of a slow roasted brisket in a Ziploc bag. I also have homemade frozen Salisbury steak and frozen beef gravy. Pre-cooking meals and freezing them make it so much easier to cook on the road. I also have some frozen ground beef to make beef breakfast patties and other meals. In addition to that, I have a pack of frozen chicken from the chicken thighs from the market. We raise our own meat birds, but I didn't have any more butchered chicken, and I didn't want to take a whole chicken on a trip. So instead, I just picked up some frozen chicken thighs from the market. I stacked all of the frozen meat on the bottom left-hand side of the cooler and placed a towel around the meat to act as insulation to keep the meat frozen, as well as keep it from causing the other foods around it to freeze. All of the vegetables packed for this trip came from our garden, which includes cabbage, collard greens, Swiss chard, and kale. This trip is taking place in very early spring, so these are the cool weather crops that we have been eating since winter. Spring crops such as broccoli, string beans, sugar snaps, and so forth would not have been ready at this time. I also packed some cheese to go on crackers for snacks and to make cheese eggs for breakfast. And here's a look at our sandwiches that we will eat on our way to our destination. And lastly, we also packed some rolls. Fruit, cupcakes, and a slice of cake in the cooler. This is a final look at all of the food that we packed in the cooler. I only showed the perishable foods that were packed in the cooler. I also packed eggs, which as you can see are a little dirty. We do not refrigerate our farm fresh eggs because we do not wash the invisible protective layer off, called the bloom. So the eggs were packed in a tote along with the rice, coffee, plates, utensils, and other items that we took on the trip. 4 days into the trip, we had to buy 2 bags of ice to keep the food cool for the remainder of the trip. That ended up costing us about $10. That's how much one fast food sandwich costs nowadays. So it was well worth it. Well worth packing our own food for this trip. And as you can see, the ice ended up melting and causing a puddle in the bottom of the cooler. This is why I am a big fan of making our own ice blocks in watertight containers. This is a look at my setup on the trip. I spent some time getting everything set up in a manner that was easy for me to move around and grab what I needed very easily. You will also notice a potato on the table. There are many foods, fresh foods that you can take that does not need to be refrigerated, such as onions, garlic, potatoes, and more. And I did pack each of these items in a separate tote. You can also take carrots, beets, and fresh sprouts. Now, I did not show any of the cooking that I did in this video, but I do in the next video. I will show you how I cooked while on the trip, fresh foods, my setup, which was a little different than here, and I also demonstrate how I cleaned the dishes and kept the area cleaned using a limited amount of water. I hope that you have enjoyed this video. Definitely stay tuned for the next video where you will see footage of me cooking and how I am able to keep everything clean using a very small amount of water. Please like, share, and subscribe to help this small channel to grow.